You're now ready to meet your fourth voter. He states his name is Edward Darby. He's also come into the polling location with his Ohio driver's license to use as ID. The first step is to greet the voter.
Good morning.
Morning.
May I have your ID?
Sure.
If a photo ID, ensure it's valid by checking against the criteria in a guide to valid photo IDs. If a non-photo ID, ensure it's valid by checking against the criteria in a guide to valid non-photo IDs. If a military ID, ensure it's valid by checking against the criteria in a guide to military IDs. If the ID is expired or does not meet criteria, ask for another form of ID. If no other form of ID is available, follow the steps in the Assisting Provisional Voters section. Our voter has a photo ID, so we'll use the OPEN acronym to see if it's valid. OPEN, Open, stands for O, Ohio, is the voter an Ohio resident? P, Photo, does the person look like the ID photo? E, Expiration, is the ID expired? N, Name, does the name match the voter's name on the EPB? You can find a guide to acceptable name matches in the gold roster section of the manual as well. Edward Darby's license has expired. His ID does not meet the requirements for a valid ID. Ask the voter if he has another form of ID.
Edward, your driver's license has expired. Do you have another form of ID?
I don't.
Right. Well, you can go home and get another ID, or you can vote provisionally today.
No, I'll vote today.
If he has another valid ID, you may use that to process Edward Darby. In this case, he does not have any other form of ID. He can still vote provisionally. Press Manual Entry on the EPB screen. The voter states his name is Edward Darby, and he lives at 1337 Ashland Avenue. Do not scan an expired ID. Enter the first 3 letters of the last name and the first 3 letters of the first name, then press Search. If the voter is unable to provide valid ID on the Choose ID screen, touch No ID. Touch Process Provisionally. Verify the voter's stated name and address. Touch Accept. The next screen will tell us the method Edward will use to cast his ballot. Since he came to the location without an ID, he'll vote on a provisional paper ballot. On the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, press the down arrow to the right of voting method. Select Pre-printed paper for the method. Press the Submit button on the top right-hand corner of the screen. The Reason for Paper Ballot slip will print. Give the printed RFPB slip to the voter and direct them to the paper ballot table.